Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we are going to be speaking about our Parsha, Parsha Bo, and it's also going to be connected to a very interesting concept in Chassidut. One of the deepest concepts in the discourse of Chassidus is related to our Parsha. So after reading last week the 7 plagues, the 7 makos that the Egyptians received, this Parsha brings us to the highlight of Exodus, the highlight of leaving Egypt, the highlight of the plagues, and also, in a certain way, the highlight of Hashem's revelation. These are things that did not happen before. This is a special miracle that we're going to be looking at, something that happened in our Parsha. So our Parsha talks about the last 3 final makos, and the last makkah, the last plague, was the plague of Bechoros, which is the plague where all of the firstborn were killed by Hashem. That is the plague of Bechoros. That's the plague that caused the Egyptians also to let Am Yisrael and everyone, just let them all leave. The Medrash says that Paro was searching for Moshe. On that night, for Moshe, he was searching for him because he himself, Paro, the ruler of Egypt, the king of Egypt, he himself was a firstborn. So, of course, he didn't want to die, and that's why immediately he told Moshe, just leave. Whoever wants to leave could leave, not only the men, even your sheep, your cattle, etc., etc. There was something very interesting in this plague of the firstborn. And what was so interesting is that, first of all, Moshe tells Paro, at midnight I will bring this plague upon Mitzrayim. This is something very interesting, notifying Paro the exact time, telling him when exactly it would happen. Why? Why is it necessary to tell Paro when he'll start giving this makkah? And we know that this is something that didn't happen often. There was only one other plague with a certain time. But here, what's the reason of telling him a certain time? Another interesting difference that we see in this plague that we could not find in other plagues is that Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, they needed to behave in a certain way. During the other plagues, it did not affect Am Yisrael at all. Am Yisrael, the stories that the Medrash tells us, is that if one Jew would drink from the Nile River, he would drink water. And if the Egyptian would drink from the Nile River, he would drink blood. By the way, how did they survive? This plague lasted for 7 days. So how did Egypt survive without water for 7 days? The Medrash tells us that if the Egyptians would buy from one of Bnei Israel, if they would buy from them water, it would stay water and it would not turn into blood. And that was the way that they basically dealt with this thirst that they had, because none of the water was water. It was all turned into blood. So we see throughout all the plagues that Am Yisrael did not need to behave in a certain way. Am Yisrael were not affected at all by the plagues of Hashem, But nevertheless, when it comes to the plague of killing the firstborn, Am Yisrael were affected. Am Yisrael were affected, and they needed to do two things, two very important things in order to save themselves. The Medrash tells us that if not, also the firstborn of Am Yisrael would be killed. So what did they need to do? What did Am Yisrael need to do when it came to the plague of killing the firstborn? Two very important things. First of all, putting blood on the entrance to the house, the sides of the door, in a way where it was noticed. And it says that the angel of death would skip over the houses of Am Yisrael and not affect them, not kill their firstborn. And the blood was the blood of the Passover, the blood of the Korban, the offering of the Korban Pesach, the offering of Pesach. And it also says that there was the blood of the Bris Milah circumcision. Before Am Yisrael left Egypt, before they brought this offering, the Torah tells Moshe, V'chol orel lo yochal boi. Cannot eat the Passover. It's a very special and very holy offering. And for that reason, they need to prepare for it and circumcise all men. This wasn't something that everyone did. Today, we all do it after Matan Torah, or to be accurate, after leaving Egypt. They already started doing this. But that's when it started. Now they had to do something else. It didn't end there with circumcision and putting blood on the entrance to the house, the blood of the offering of Pesach, of the Passover, but they were not allowed to leave their houses. And it says that if they were to leave the house and they would be found outside, the angel of death would not be able to recognize who is Jewish, who is not, and therefore also the Jewish firstborn would be killed. And here, once again, the question is why? What is the difference between all the plagues to the plague of killing the firstborn? For example, we don't see that during the plague of frogs, for example, Am Yisrael needed to do some kind of sign, some kind of recognition that the angel bringing that plague down to earth would recognize and know, no, this is a Jewish house. I'm not going to bring the frogs inside. There was no such a thing. They didn't need to do anything special for that. Automatically, it already happened in a way that it didn't harm the Jewish houses. So how come suddenly over here we have to do a certain sign? The pasuk tells us a very interesting, idea, and what it says is that Keivan shenitna reshut lamashchit eino mavchin, because a permission was given to the mashchis. The mashchis is the person, is the angel that is there to destroy. He does not differ between Am Yisrael and the Egyptians. There's no difference to him because he has the permission to destroy. He's called a mashchit, which is a destroyer, basically. This angel was the angel of death, but his purpose was to destroy. And therefore, this is something we see only during this plague, only during the plague of killing the firstborn. And Chassidus explains it in a deeper way. The purpose of the plagues weren't to punish the Egyptians. Hashem has no joy seeing Hashem has no interest in causing damage for the sake of damage. Hashem says the reason to bring these plagues are to teach the Egyptians about his existence. And we know that the impurity that the Egyptians brought to the world was a great impurity, where they claimed that they don't need Hashem in their lives. They did not deny his existence. But imagine, today we know that rain is something necessary. Rain is something that we cannot live without it. Water is something that we cannot live without it. And there are many Israeli technologies that help turn seawater into sweet water that we could drink. Why? Because the sources of sweet water that people could drink are very few. And as the years go by, they become fewer and fewer. And that is why a lot of countries, especially countries in Africa and countries in Asia, they use these technologies very much because it helps them to provide water, even though they don't have the natural source, which is rain from heaven. And we know that in Eretz Yisrael, for example, sometimes the rain doesn't begin immediately at the beginning of winter. We are now lucky to enjoy a few days of rain, but it isn't so simple. And there are many years where the rain only starts February, even January is already late. December is also late. And what happens is that when we suffer from this, from it not raining, what happens is that a few times there's been special prayers, special davenings, even special fasts that the rabbis, the chief rabbi of Israel decides on. And throughout the years, it's been amazing to see how, what a big effect the rain, the davenings have on the rain, which means that an immediate result of our davenings, our prayer, and the fasting, that can influence rain. So rain is something where, first of all, we can't live without it. And second of all, it's not predictable. It's not predictable. And for that reason, we know we are dependent on Hashem. We know that we are in Hashem's hands when it comes to rain. We know that this is something that we can't play with. This is not something we could change. Here is the problem of the Egyptians. The Egyptians had the Nile River. And with this, they were able to provide water, first of all, for themselves to drink, but not only for themselves to drink, but also for their land, for their animals, for whatever they needed. The Nile River is one of the greatest sources in the world of natural sweet water. And for that reason, imagine how the Egyptians never needed to raise their eyes to Hashem praying for rain. This is a deep, deep level of impurity, ignoring Hashem, thinking that Hashem is irrelevant. Hashem has nothing to do with our natural lives. And we know that it's not like that. Hashem is in control even of nature. This is the point of the plagues. The plagues were not there to just take revenge. The plagues were not there just to punish the Egyptians, to cause them suffering. They were there to teach them that you have to relate to Hashem in your lives. You have to see how, no matter what, even if things are going naturally smooth, you've got to notice, you've got to pay attention to the fact that Hashem, He is the one that's managing this nature. And that is why suddenly these plagues come, and this is something unexpected. This is something that they wouldn't imagine. But this can happen because, once again, Hashem is in control of all of this. The Makkah, the plague that's different, the plague that isn't like all the other 9, is the plague of the firstborn, where that is connected to the permission that Hashem gave this angel to destroy. That wasn't to teach the Egyptians. They learned enough. Now it's time for Hashem to swallow them, like the stick of Aharon swallowed the other stick, completely erase them and punish them, take revenge for the sake of punishment, not to teach them. This is the plague of killing the firstborn. The plague of killing the firstborn is different to the other plagues. And for this reason, we can now understand why Am Yisrael needed to protect themselves. They were not allowed to leave their homes. They had to circumcise all men. They had to put blood on the entrance to the house. So this angel, the angel of death, destroying Egypt, would not affect them. The reason to this is that because Am Yisrael themselves, they were also in a very, very bad position. They were also in a very, very bad place. They were also sunk deep in the 49 levels of impurity that were there in Egypt. And this is what happens when Am Yisrael are in exile. So what happens is that Am Yisrael are affected by this galut, by this exile. Not only affected physically, where they can't do whatever they want, but they also are affected in a way where the impurity sticks to them and they also become impure. This is why there was a claim up in heaven, a big discussion between 2 parties of angels. And the Medrash tells us that this discussion happened quite a few times. It happened, as we'll read in the next Parsha, Am Yisrael crossing the Red Sea. The great miracle of the Red Sea splitting in half and allowing Am Yisrael just to naturally go through the sea without being washed away. And then when it came to the Egyptians, they were all washed away and they drowned. And there was a big, big argument up in Shamayim between 2 parties of angels, where the angels claimed that what is the difference between the Jews and the Egyptians? They worship idols and they worship idols. Well, apparently, Am Yisrael, when they were in Egypt, unfortunately, they became so impure that they started worshiping idols. And therefore, the angels said, well, what is the difference? They can't even notice the difference between the two, between the Jewish people leaving Egypt, Bnei Yisrael, and the Egyptians. They were both idol worshippers. This claim starts in our parsha. This claim starts when Hashem says, you know what, this plague is to punish them, it's not to teach them. If it's teaching, Am Yisrael already knows that Hashem exists. Am Yisrael do not need this lesson. But if we are talking about punishment, certain angels claimed that Am Yisrael also deserves to be punished for the sins, for worshiping idols, and for other sins that they did during the time that they were there in Egypt, stuck in this impure environment. This was the claim of the angels. Hashem said, in order to avoid this claim, and this is quite a dangerous claim, there's something also true to this claim. Hashem says, I'm going to go myself. And this was the whole idea of the last plague, killing the firstborn, is Hashem says it's not going to be by an angel. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it myself means the highest level. In the words of Chassidut, it refers to the Atzmus of Hashem. Atzmus of Hashem is the essence of Hashem. It's the highest word that we can try and describe Hashem with. It's not himself. It's not his angel. It's not an unlimited power. This is Atzmus. This is him himself. And for that reason, Hashem basically wanted us to prepare for this revelation. Hashem wanted us to make some kind of effort on our side in order to prove the angels wrong, in order to make a difference between them and the Egyptians. How do you do such a thing? How do you basically differ yourself from the Egyptians in the highest way possible? The highest way we know is the way of Mesirut Nefesh. Mesirut Nefesh means giving up on our soul, giving up on our bodies for the sake of Hashem. Mesirut Nefesh is an act that makes no sense, that is illogical, that shows our true devotion towards Hashem and shows our true loyalty towards Hashem. This was done in two ways, two special mitzvahs. One mitzvah was circumcision. When do we do the bris? We do the bris when the child is 8 days old. This is Mesirus Nefesh. No logic. The kid doesn't even understand what's happening. He cannot deny it. He cannot say no. He cannot refuse. But nevertheless, our connection is bonded so deeply, or not only deeply, but so naturally, where we just where we do the circumcision immediately when we can, after 8 days, because it's natural. Our connection to Hashem is so natural. The second mitzvah is the mitzvah that Hashem says, bring me an offering of the Passover. In Egypt, bringing offerings was something very difficult, very hard. You had to have Mesirus Nefesh. You had to throw your life. You had to give up on your life if you wanted to bring an offering. And why is that? Because the Egyptians, their idol were, if I'm not mistaken, the idol was the sheep. Today we know in India, the cows are something very important. I don't know exactly the law that applies there, but maybe if you disrespect the cow, or if you kill a cow, or I don't know, if you don't wait for the cow to pass the road, to cross the road, so you might be sent to jail. Because also in India, the cows have some special whatever it is, I don't know if it's as an idol, maybe not an idol, but they have some respect towards the cows. Now, in Egypt, the sheep were basically idols. A person that would bring this sheep and kill the sheep, bring it as an offering to Hashem, the Egyptians would kill them. Not only that, it says that the Torah tells us that you couldn't just do it quickly. You couldn't just take the sheep, buy a sheep, and shecht it, and bring it as an offering in 1 hour, which technically you could do, but Hashem said no. Take the sheep a few days before, tie it to your beds. And the Medrash tells us that the Egyptians asked the Jews, what's happening here? Why are you taking this sheep and why are you tying it to your bed? And the Jews answered, and this is the Mesirus Nefesh. This is the true Mesirus Nefesh that they had. The Jews said, we are soon going to leave Egypt. Hashem told us to bring the sheep as an offering. To say something like that is to go into India and to tell them that the cows are worthless. That is Mesiras Nefesh. When we overcome our limitations, when we overcome our boundaries, Hashem, as a result, overcomes his limitations and his boundaries. And therefore, when it comes to this plague of Bechairos, killing the firstborn, although it might be that there is no difference between us and the Egyptians, we were both deep in these 49 gates of impurity. We both worshipped idols, but nevertheless, we did these special acts of Mesiras Nefesh, of giving up our lives for the command of Hashem. And that is why Am Yisrael was saved. That is why this plague out of the other plagues were very different. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them it is the highest time during the day. It's the time where Hashem himself is revealed. It's the middle of the night, the border between the first part of the night, that the first part of the night is connected to Gvura, to the midah, to the attribute of Gvura, of harshness, and to the second part of the night that is connected to the attribute of chesed, of kindness. That is why we needed these special signs, not leaving the house, doing the bris, and also putting blood on the entrance to the house, on the door. Thank you very, very much. And I'm wishing you all a great day and a Shavua Tov. Thank you.